The golden hues of the setting sun bathed the empty road in a melancholic light. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth, and the distant chirping of birds began to fade into an unsettling silence. By the roadside, a gleaming silver luxury car sat motionless, its grandeur oddly out of place in the desolate surroundings. Sophia, a visibly pregnant woman dressed in fine clothes, leaned against the car, her face etched with growing panic. Her hands trembled as she repeatedly glanced at her phone, desperately searching for a signal. The perspiration on her brow wasn't from the evening heat. It was the gnawing dread of being stranded. Alone and vulnerable, Sophia felt the sharp pains intensify in her abdomen, a foreboding signal that her baby might arrive sooner than expected. On the opposite side of the road, Ethan trudged along the gravel path, his worn-out shoes kicking up small clouds of dust. In his hand, he carried a tattered bag filled with scavenged scraps, remnants of his survival in an unforgiving world. Though only 12 years old, Ethan's hardened demeanor spoke of a life full of hardship. His torn clothes hung loosely on his thin frame, but his sharp eyes remained observant. When his gaze fell upon the motionless car and the distressed woman, his curiosity drew him closer. Vehicles like that were rare in the area, a symbol of wealth Ethan had only dreamed of. As he approached, Sophia noticed him and instinctively took a step back. Her eyes scanned his ragged appearance, wary of his intentions. "Ma'am, do you need help?" Ethan asked, his voice cautious but genuine. Sophia hesitated. The boy didn't appear threatening, but his disheveled state made her uneasy. Yet, her desperate circumstances left her little choice. "My car ran out of gas," she explained, her voice quivering, "and I think something's wrong with my baby." Ethan's eyes widened, sensing the urgency. Though he had no resources, leaving her alone in such a vulnerable state wasn't an option. "There's a place not far from here," he offered, pointing toward a narrow trail leading into the woods. "We might find help there." Sophia looked at the empty road behind her, then at the trail. She was out of options. Trusting this boy felt risky, but her instincts urged her to follow him. They began walking, Sophia leaning heavily on Ethan as the sharp pains in her abdomen worsened. Despite his small frame, Ethan supported her with surprising strength. Along the way, he tried to distract her from the pain by sharing bits of his life. "I don't have a home anymore," he said quietly. "I've been on my own since my mom passed. She didn't make it when she had my little sister." Sophia, wincing through her contractions, felt a pang of sympathy for his words carried a sadness far beyond his years. "You're brave, Ethan," she managed to say, her voice trembling. He gave a faint smile but avoided her gaze. Before he could respond, Sophia suddenly collapsed to her knees, clutching her stomach. "My baby! It's coming!" she cried out, her face contorted in pain. Ethan's heart raced as panic gripped him. He scanned the area frantically and spotted an old, abandoned cabin tucked among the trees. Without hesitation, he helped Sophia to her feet and guided her inside. The cabin was small and decrepit, its wooden walls weathered by time. Dust hung in the air, and cobwebs stretched across the corners. Still, it offered shelter. Ethan laid Sophia on the floor and hurried outside to fetch water from a nearby stream. Returning with a makeshift container, he did his best to clean the area around her. Sophia's contractions became more frequent and intense. Her cries echoed through the cabin, filling Ethan with dread. He tried to remember stories he'd heard about childbirth, but nothing could have prepared him for this. "You're going to have to help me," Sophia gasped, her eyes pleading. "I can't do this alone." Ethan froze. The weight of her words bore down on him, but he quickly pushed his fear aside. If there was one thing he had learned from his harsh life, it was that giving up was never an option. Nightfall brought an eerie stillness outside the cabin. Inside, however, the tension was palpable. Sophia gripped Ethan's hand tightly as she fought through each wave of pain. The boy guided her as best as he could, encouraging her through labored breaths and anguished cries. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sound of a newborn's cry pierced the air. Ethan held the baby in his trembling hands, his face a mixture of relief and awe. Using the cleanest cloth he could find, he wrapped the infant and gently placed them in Sophia's arms. "You saved us," Sophia whispered weakly, tears streaming down her face. You're my hero." But before Ethan could respond, Sophia's eyes fluttered shut, her exhaustion overtaking her. Panic seized Ethan once more as he realized he was now alone, responsible for both a newborn and an unconscious mother. For a long moment, Ethan sat motionless, cradling the baby as the reality of the situation sank in. The flickering light of the moon cast shadows across the room, and the boy knew the night was far from over. He had done the impossible, but a greater challenge still lay ahead. As he looked down at the tiny, fragile life in his arms, Ethan silently vowed to protect them both, no matter the cost. The faint cries of the newborn echoed through the still night, a fragile sound that seemed to fill every corner of the tiny cabin. Ethan sat on the dusty floor, cradling the infant in his trembling arms. His gaze shifted to Sophia, whose chest rose and fell faintly. She was unconscious, her body limp from exhaustion. Despite her serene appearance, Ethan knew the situation was dire. He couldn't afford to sit idly. Her life and the baby's depended on his next move. Ethan's mind raced as he tried to remember anything he'd learned or overheard about childbirth and post-delivery care. His world had been harsh and unkind, but it had forced him to observe and adapt. He glanced around the cabin, searching for anything that might help. The dim light from the moon streaming through a crack in the roof revealed only old furniture and layers of grime. With a deep breath, he laid the baby down carefully on a blanket he had improvised from his own worn. The infant's tiny hands flailed as they cried, their face red and scrunched. Ethan knew he had to. He quickly returned to Sophia's side, shaking her gently. "Miss, you have to wake up," his voice breaking with desperation. "Please. Your baby needs you." Sophia stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering open. Her face was pale and her lips were dry. She looked at Ethan with a weak smile, her voice barely above a whisper. You saved us." Her words slurred with exhaustion. Ethan shook his head, brushing off the praise. "You need water. You've lost a lot of blood. Stay here, I'll be right back." Ethan darted out of the cabin, his small frame disappearing into the surrounding trees. The cool night air stung his face as he sprinted toward the stream he had seen earlier. The forest was eerily quiet, and every rustling leaf made his heart pound. Carrying an old tin can he'd scavenged, he knelt by the water and filled it to the brim, his hands trembling. As he turned to leave, a sharp noise behind him made him freeze. He whipped around to see a pair of glowing eyes staring at him through the darkness. A stray dog, mangy and feral, bared its teeth, growling low. Ethan tightened his grip on the can, fear gripping him. He couldn't afford to lose the water. Sophia's life depended on it. Summoning his courage, Ethan grabbed a nearby stick and waved it in the air, shouting to scare the animal away. After a tense standoff, the dog retreated, disappearing into the shadows. Ethan exhaled sharply, clutching the tin can to his chest as he raced back to the cabin. Inside the cabin, Sophia was barely conscious. Her breathing was shallow, and she struggled to open her eyes. Ethan knelt beside her and carefully lifted her head, bringing the can of water to her lips. She sipped weakly, her body trembling as she tried to regain strength. "The baby, is he okay?" she murmured. Ethan nodded quickly, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "The baby's fine, but you need to rest. I'll take care of both of you." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You're just a child. Why are you doing this for me?" Ethan hesitated. The truth was, he didn't fully understand why himself. Maybe it was the memory of his mother, who had died alone and in pain. Maybe it was the simple fact that he couldn't bear to see another life slip away when he could do something about it. "No one helped my mom when she needed it," he finally said, his voice quiet. "I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save you." Sophia reached out weakly, placing a hand on his arm. "You already have." As dawn broke, Ethan knew he couldn't stay in the cabin any longer. Sophia needed real medical attention, and the baby needed proper care. He decided to make the perilous journey back to the main road in hopes of flagging down a passing car. Wrapping the baby in a blanket, he gently placed them in Sophia's arms. Despite her protests, Ethan insisted on carrying her part of the way. His small frame strained under her weight, but his determination pushed him forward. The forest seemed endless, and the uneven terrain made every step a challenge. Halfway through the journey, Sophia collapsed, unable to continue. Ethan panicked, checking her pulse and finding it faint but present. He placed the baby beside her and ran ahead, desperate to find help. Reaching the main road, Ethan waved his arms frantically as a large truck approached. The vehicle slowed, and a gruff-looking man leaned out the window, eyeing Ethan with suspicion. "What do you want, kid?" the man barked. Please, sir, Ethan begged. There's a woman and her baby. She's hurt. We need help. The man glanced at Ethan's tattered clothes and scoffed. You're probably just trying to rob me. Get lost. Ethan's heart sank as the truck roared away, leaving him in a cloud of dust. He clenched his fists, fighting back tears. The rejection stung, but he couldn't give up. He returned to Sophia, determined to find another way. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ethan spotted another car in the distance. This time, it was a modest vehicle, not the luxury kind that Sophia had been driving. He stepped onto the road, waving both arms to catch the driver's attention. The car slowed to a stop, and a middle-aged woman stepped out. Her kind eyes softened as she took in the sight of Ethan, the baby, and Sophia lying unconscious nearby. "Oh my God!" she gasped. "What happened?" Ethan quickly explained, his words tumbling out in a rush. The woman didn't hesitate. She helped Ethan lift Sophia into the back seat, securing the baby carefully in her arms. The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. Ethan sat in the back seat, holding Sophia's hand as her breathing grew weaker. The woman driving offered reassuring words, but Ethan could see the worry etched on her face. When they finally arrived, a team of doctors and nurses rushed to Sophia's side, whisking her away on a stretcher. Ethan remained in the waiting room, clutching the baby and refusing to let. The woman who had helped them stayed by his side, her presence a small comfort in the overwhelming chaos. Hours passed before a doctor emerged, his expression serious. "She's stable," he said, "but it was close." "You brought her just in time." Ethan exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. He looked down at the baby in his arms and smiled faintly. For the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to hope. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air as Ethan sat in the hospital waiting room, clutching the newborn in his arms. His tattered clothes and dirty face looked out of place amid the gleaming white walls and polished floors. Despite his exhaustion, he refused to let go of the baby, whose tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. The child's faint breathing grounded him, providing a strange sense of purpose in the chaos. Sophia remained in the intensive care unit, her condition stable but critical. Nurses occasionally glanced at Ethan, whispering amongst themselves. To them, he was an enigma, a boy who had emerged from nowhere, saving a woman and her baby with nothing but his willpower. The woman who had driven them to the hospital. Margaret approached Ethan with a warm smile. She had stayed by his side, sensing that he needed someone to lean on. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed on the baby. "She's safe now, but I don't know what's next." Margaret placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Let's take it one step at a time. You've done something extraordinary, Ethan, but it's okay to let someone else help now." Margaret, a retired nurse, felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility for the boy and the woman he had saved. She approached the hospital administration, advocating for Ethan to stay while Sophia recovered. However, the staff expressed concern about his presence. "He's just a street kid," one administrator said dismissively. "This isn't a shelter." Margaret bristled at the remark. "He's a hero. That woman and her baby wouldn't be here if it weren't for him. You owe him at least a warm meal and a place to rest." Her persistence paid off. The hospital provided Ethan with a spare cot in the maternity ward and meals from the cafeteria. It wasn't much, but for Ethan, it was more than he'd had in years. 3 days later, Sophia opened her eyes. The room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Her gaze immediately searched for her baby, panic flashing in her eyes until she spotted Ethan sitting by the crib. "You're here," she said weakly, her voice cracking. Ethan jumped to his feet, relief flooding his face. "You're awake! The doctor said you'd pull through, but I was still worried." Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she took in the sight of the boy who had saved her life. "You didn't leave us," she whispered. "Thank you." Ethan shrugged, his modesty masking the magnitude of what he had done. "I promised I'd take care of you and the baby." The moment was interrupted by a nurse who entered with a clipboard. "Ms. Carter, it's good to see you awake. We need to talk about your recovery. And your finances." Sophia's face fell. She had avoided thinking about the mess she had left behind. The truth was, her wealth had been tied up in a legal battle with her estranged husband. The luxury car, the designer clothes, everything had been borrowed to maintain appearances. Ethan, overhearing the conversation, furrowed his brow. He had assumed Sophia was a millionaire. someone whose life was far removed from his own. Now he realized she was struggling too. As Sophia began her slow recovery, the hospital bills loomed over her like a dark cloud. Margaret, noticing her distress, offered to help connect her with social services, but Sophia hesitated. "I can't accept charity," Sophia insisted. "I've worked too hard to let my pride slip away now." Margaret frowned but didn't press further. Instead, she turned her attention to Ethan, who continued to stay by Sophia's side, caring for the baby and offering quiet support. One afternoon, while the baby napped, Sophia called Ethan over. "Tell me about yourself," she said, her voice soft but curious. "Why were you out there alone that night?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I've been on my own for a while," he admitted. "After my mom died, I didn't have anyone, so I learned to survive." Sophia's heart ached for the boy. Despite his hardships, he had shown incredible compassion and strength. "You're remarkable, Ethan," she said. "No one has ever done for me what you've done." Her words struck a chord in Ethan, who had always felt invisible to the world. For the first time, he felt seen, determined to repay Ethan for his kindness. Sophia began formulating a plan. Though her financial situation was precarious, she still had contacts who could help. She decided to reach out to an old friend, Daniel, a wealthy businessman who had always admired her resilience. Daniel arrived at the hospital in a sleek black car, his tailored suit exuding confidence. When he saw Sophia, his concern was genuine. "Sophia, I came as soon as I heard. What happened?" Sophia recounted her ordeal, including Ethan's heroic actions. Daniel listened intently, his sharp eyes occasionally drifting to the boy who sat quietly by the crib. "You've got a good heart, kid," Daniel said, extending a hand to Ethan. "People like you are rare." Ethan shook his hand tentatively, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to praise, especially from someone so polished and successful. Daniel turned back to Sophia. "Let me help you get back on your feet. We'll figure this out together." Sophia nodded, her gratitude evident. But as she looked at Ethan, she felt a deeper sense of responsibility. This boy had saved her life, and she couldn't let him slip back into the shadows. Later that evening, as the baby slept peacefully in the crib, Sophia called Ethan over. She looked at him with a mixture of admiration and determination. "Ethan," she began, "I want to help you. You've given me and my baby a second chance, and I want to give you one too." Ethan frowned, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" "I want you to stay with us," she said firmly. "You've already become like family to me. Let me take care of you the way you took care of us." Ethan's eyes widened. No one had ever offered him a home before. The idea felt foreign, almost too good to be true. "I don't know," he said hesitantly. What if I mess it up?" Sophia reached for his hand, her grip steady despite her weakness. "You won't. You've already proven you're capable of more than most adults. Let me be the one to show you that it's okay to trust again." The sterile hospital lights flickered faintly as Ethan lay awake on the cot in Sophia's room. Her offer lingered in his mind, both tantalizing and terrifying. A home, a family, concepts that had seemed unreachable for so long, now dangled before him like a distant dream. But Ethan's life had taught him one thing: promises often came with strings attached. Sophia, still recovering, watched the boy with quiet concern. She knew her proposal had overwhelmed him. It wasn't an easy decision for a child who had learned to survive alone, but she was determined to keep her promise. Ethan had saved her and her baby. Now, it was her turn to save him. 2 days later, the doctors declared Sophia well enough to be discharged. Ethan helped her pack her modest belongings, all while trying to avoid the nervous knot in his stomach. Margaret, ever the motherly figure, insisted on driving them home. Her small car was a stark contrast to the luxury vehicle Sophia had left abandoned, a reminder of how much her life had changed. The drive was quiet, save for the soft coos of the baby cradled in Sophia's arms. Ethan sat in the back seat, his hands fidgeting nervously. When Margaret finally pulled up to a small, cozy apartment complex on the edge of town, Ethan's anxiety reached its peak. "This is home," Sophia said softly, stepping out of the car. Ethan hesitated, standing outside the doorway with his bag slung over his shoulder. Sophia turned to him, her eyes warm but resolute. "You don't have to decide today," she said gently. "But if you want to stay, there's a place for you here." Her words hung in the air as Ethan slowly followed her inside. The apartment was humble but inviting. It lacked the grandeur of her past life, but Sophia had managed to create a warm space for her. Photos of happier times adorned the wall, and the scent of lavender lingered in the air. Ethan was shown to a small room at the end of the hall. It was sparsely furnished, a bed, a nightstand, and a lamp. But to Ethan, it felt like a palace. He ran his hand over the clean sheets, marveling at their softness. "This is yours," Sophia said from the doorway. "If you want it." Ethan nodded, still unsure how to express his gratitude. He had spent so long fending for himself that the idea of someone caring for him felt foreign. The days that followed were filled with tentative steps toward normalcy. Ethan quickly proved to be a natural with the baby, whom Sophia had named Lila. He cradled her gently, changed her diapers with surprising ease, and even hummed lullabies he barely remembered his mother singing to him. But the outside world was less forgiving. Sophia's financial troubles loomed like a storm cloud. The hospital bills were mounting, and her legal battle with her estranged husband, Gregory, showed no signs of resolution. Gregory, a wealthy but ruthless man, had frozen her accounts in an effort to force her back into his life. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Gregory's lawyer, demanding custody of the baby. Sophia's face turned pale as she read the harsh words. "He's trying to take Lila away from me," she whispered, her voice shaking. Ethan, standing nearby, clenched his fists. "Why would he do that? She's just a baby." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Because it's not about her. It's about control. He doesn't care about Lila. He just doesn't want me to have anything." Ethan watched as Sophia broke down, her usually composed demeanor crumbling under the weight of her fears. Without thinking, he sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out," he said firmly. "We'll fight him." Sophia looked at Ethan, surprised by the strength in his voice. For a moment, she saw not a boy, but a partner in her struggle. "Thank you, Ethan," she said softly, "But I don't want you to feel like you have to take this on. You've already done so much." Ethan shook his head. "You gave me a place to stay. This is my fight too." That night, as the apartment settled into silence, Ethan sat by the window, staring at the city lights. His mind wandered to his mother, whose face was now a blurred memory. He thought of the times they had spent together before everything fell apart, and how different his life might have been if she had survived. Sophia, unable to sleep, joined him by the window. She noticed the faraway look in his eyes. "Do you miss her?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded. "Every day. She was all I had. And now, I guess I have you." Sophia smiled, her heart aching at his vulnerability. "You'll always have me, Ethan, no matter what." The next morning, a knock at the door shattered their quiet routine. Sophia froze, her heart pounding as she approached the peephole. Standing on the other side was Gregory, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his expression cold and calculating. "What are you doing here?" Sophia demanded, opening the door just enough to glare at him. "I came to see my daughter," Gregory replied smoothly, his eyes scanning the apartment with disdain. "You're living like this? It's pathetic." Sophia's grip tightened on the door. "You have no right to be here." Gregory smirked, stepping closer. "I have every right. You've forgotten who I am, Sophia. This is my child too, and I'll do whatever it takes to get her." From the hallway, Ethan watched the exchange with growing anger. He stepped forward, placing himself between Sophia and Gregory. "Leave," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear churning inside him. Gregory raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "And who's this? Your new guard dog?" Sophia pushed Ethan gently behind her. "He's none of your concern. Get out." "Gregory." Gregory's smile faded, replaced by a menacing glare. "This isn't over," he said before turning and walking away. As the door closed, Sophia leaned against it, her hands shaking. Ethan stood beside her, his jaw clenched. "I don't trust him," Ethan said. "He's going to try something." Sophia nodded, her determination hardening. "Then we'll be ready." Ethan looked at her, his admiration growing. Sophia wasn't just surviving, she was fighting. And for the first time, Ethan felt like he was part of something worth fighting for. The tension in the small apartment was almost palpable after Gregory's unannounced visit. Sophia knew his words weren't empty threats. Gregory was a man who thrived on control and manipulation, and she had spent years entangled in his web before finding the courage to leave. Now, he was back, and this time, he had leverage. Their daughter, Lila. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, absently fiddling with a loose thread on his sleeve. His mind replayed Gregory's icy gaze and smug demeanor. The man represented everything Ethan despised: wealth wielded as a weapon, power used to crush the vulnerable. But beyond his anger, there was a deeper fear. What if Gregory succeeded? What if he took Lila away and left Sophia shattered? Sophia's fears were confirmed 2 days later when a courier arrived with a thick envelope. Inside was a court summons. Gregory was filing for sole custody of Lila. The accompanying letter was laced with cruel accusations, painting Sophia as an unfit mother who couldn't provide a stable home. Sophia's hands shook as she read the letter aloud to Margaret, who had stopped by to check on them. "He's saying I'm a danger to my own child," Sophia whispered, her voice cracking. "How can he lie like this?" Margaret frowned, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Because he knows lies can win in court if you don't fight back." Ethan, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "We can fight him, right? There has to be a way." Margaret nodded. "We need a good lawyer. Someone who can expose Gregory for what he really is." Sophia sighed, sinking into a chair. "A good lawyer costs money. Money I don't have." Margaret exchanged a glance with Ethan, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Later that evening, as Sophia tucked Lila into her crib, Ethan slipped out of the apartment. He had a plan, though it was risky. He needed to find someone who could help Sophia, someone with the resources to stand up to Gregory. His feet carried him to the outskirts of the city, where he found himself in front of a towering mansion. It was a stark contrast to Sophia's modest apartment. Gleaming windows, marble pillars, and a sprawling garden lit by elegant lamps. This was Daniel's home. Ethan hesitated at the gate, feeling out of place in his worn clothes. But his resolve pushed him forward. Pressing the intercom, he cleared his throat. "I need to speak to Mr. Daniel," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. A moment later, the gate buzzed open, and Ethan was led inside by a stern-faced butler. When he finally stood before Daniel in the grand study, the businessman looked up from his desk, surprised but intrigued. "Ethan," Daniel said, setting his papers aside. "What brings you here?" Ethan explained everything: Gregory's threats, the custody battle, and the impossible odds Sophia faced. Daniel listened intently, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Gregory Carter," Daniel said with a sneer. "I've crossed paths with him before. He's ruthless, but he's not invincible." Ethan leaned forward, hope flickering in his eyes. "Can you help us?" Daniel regarded the boy with a mix of admiration and determination. "Yes, I can. But this will take more than money. We'll need to play smart, and we'll need evidence." Daniel arranged for Sophia to meet with one of the city's top family lawyers, a sharp and unyielding woman named Elaine Rivers. At their first meeting, Elaine wasted no time cutting through the emotion. "We need to prove that Gregory is unfit for custody," she said bluntly. "Do you have anything on him? Financial misconduct? Questionable associates?" Sophia shook her head. "Gregory is careful. He keeps everything under wraps." Elaine smirked. "No one is that careful. We'll dig into his records. In the meantime, I want you to focus on being the best mother you can be. Courts like to see stability." Sophia nodded, though her anxiety was still evident. "And if he lies about me?" Elaine's eyes glinted with confidence. "Then we'll make sure his lies unravel in court." As Elaine began her investigation, Gregory struck again. One evening, Sophia returned from a grocery run to find a social worker at her door. Gregory had reported her for neglect, claiming that Lila was living in unsafe conditions. The social worker inspected the apartment meticulously, asking pointed questions that made Sophia's stomach churn. Ethan watched from the corner, his fists clenched as Sophia struggled to defend herself. When the social worker finally left, Sophia collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "He's trying to destroy me," she whispered. "How can I fight someone who knows all my weaknesses?" Ethan knelt beside her, his voice steady. "You're not alone, Sophia. We'll fight him together." As the weeks passed, Elaine's team uncovered cracks in Gregory's polished facade. Financial records revealed questionable transactions tied to offshore accounts. More damningly, a former employee came forward, accusing Gregory of embezzlement and workplace harassment. Elaine presented the findings to Sophia and Ethan one evening, spreading documents across the kitchen table. "This is enough to question his character," she said. "But it won't guarantee we win. We need more." Ethan, who had been silently studying the papers, pointed to one name on a ledger. "What about this? It looks like he paid someone a lot of money right before Sophia left him." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Good eye. Let's find out who this person is." The investigation led to a shocking discovery. Gregory had paid a private investigator to dig up dirt on Sophia during their marriage. The findings were thin. Sophia had no skeletons in her closet, but the act itself painted Gregory as a manipulative and obsessive figure. When confronted with this evidence during a pre-trial hearing, Gregory's calm demeanor faltered, but he quickly recovered, smirking at Sophia as if to say, "This isn't over." Sophia left the courthouse feeling both vindicated and uneasy. Gregory's resources seemed endless, and his willingness to stoop to any level made him a formidable opponent. Back at the apartment, Sophia held Lila close, her resolve hardening. She looked at Ethan, who sat quietly beside her. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Ethan frowned. "For what?" "For reminding me that I'm stronger than he thinks," she said. "I spent years afraid of Gregory, but now I see that he's just a man. And men like him fall when they're faced with the truth." Ethan nodded, his admiration for Sophia growing. For all her struggles, she was a fighter, and she had no intention of losing. The days leading up to the custody hearing were fraught with tension. Sophia worked tirelessly to prove her ability to provide a loving and stable home for Lila, while Gregory's shadow loomed ever larger. Ethan watched as the weight of the battle bore down on her. She was trying to be strong, but he could see the cracks forming. Elaine's evidence had given them hope, but Gregory was cunning. It was clear he wasn't going to back down, not without delivering one final, crushing blow. The morning of the hearing arrived, and the courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs. Sophia sat at the plaintiff's table with Elaine by her side, holding Lila close. Ethan sat behind her, his fists clenched tightly on his lap. Across the aisle, Gregory sat with his team of lawyers, exuding confidence. His smirk sent a chill down Ethan's spine. The judge entered, and the courtroom fell silent. Gregory's lead attorney stood first, presenting their case with an air of smug superiority. They painted Sophia as unstable, financially incapable, and, most damning of all, claimed she had endangered Lila by associating with questionable individuals. Sophia's face paled as the attorney pointed directly at Ethan. "This young man," the attorney declared, "has a documented history of vagrancy, theft, and delinquency. Is this the kind of environment a child should be exposed to?" Ethan's heart sank as murmurs rippled through the courtroom. He wanted to shout that it wasn't true, that he had never stolen a thing in his life. But his voice caught in his throat. Elaine quickly rose to counter the claim. "This boy," she said firmly, "risked his life to save Ms. Carter and her child. His courage and integrity are beyond reproach." But the damage was done. Gregory's attorney had planted the seed of doubt, and Sophia could see it in the judge's furrowed brow. During a recess, Gregory cornered Sophia in the hallway. His polished smile was as cold as ice. "Give it up, Sophia," he said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You can't win. You know how this ends." Sophia's jaw tightened, but before she could respond, Ethan stepped between them. "Leave her alone," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Gregory laughed, a low, cruel sound. "How noble. But this isn't a fairy tale, boy. Heroes like you don't get happy endings." Sophia grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him away. "Don't listen to him," she whispered. But his words lingered, casting a dark shadow over their fragile confidence. As the hearing resumed, Elaine made her final argument, presenting the evidence of Gregory's financial misconduct and manipulative behavior. She spoke passionately about Sophia's unwavering love for Lila and her determination to provide a better life for her daughter. The courtroom held its breath as the judge reviewed the evidence. Then, in a surprising move, Gregory stood up. "Your Honor," he said, feigning remorse, "I've reconsidered. Perhaps I've been too harsh in my pursuit of custody. I'm willing to settle for joint custody." Elaine's eyes narrowed. This was a calculated move, one designed to make Gregory appear reasonable while keeping control firmly in his grasp. Sophia glanced at Elaine, unsure how to respond. Ethan, sensing the hesitation, leaned forward and whispered, "Don't trust him." Elaine stood, her voice sharp. "Your Honor, while my client appreciates Mr. Carter's change of heart, we maintain that sole custody is in the child's best interest." Just as the judge was preparing to adjourn, Gregory's attorney dropped a bombshell. "We have one final piece of evidence to present," she said, handing a folder to the judge. The courtroom fell silent as the judge reviewed the contents. Her expression hardened, and she looked up at Sophia. "Miss Carter," the judge said gravely, "can you explain these?" Sophia's hands trembled as she flipped through the photos inside the folder. They showed her in compromising situations, leaving bars late at night, arguing with Gregory in public, and even one photo doctored to make it appear as though she was using drugs. "They're fake!" Sophia exclaimed, her voice rising in panic. "This is all fabricated!" Gregory's attorney shrugged with mock innocence. "The photos speak for themselves." The judge called for a recess to review the evidence, leaving Sophia reeling. Ethan sat beside her, his mind racing. He had to do something, anything to fix this. Ethan slipped out of the courtroom during the recess, his heart pounding. He remembered Daniel's words. Gregory wasn't invincible. There had to be a way to expose him. Ethan made his way to the courthouse parking lot, where Gregory's sleek black car was parked. He lingered nearby until he saw Gregory step outside to make a phone call. Staying out of sight, Ethan strained to hear the conversation. "What do you mean the photos aren't convincing enough?" Gregory hissed into his phone. "I paid you to make this airtight. Fix it, or you're done." Ethan's eyes widened. This was it, the proof they needed. But how could he get it into the judge's hands? Ethan didn't have time to think. He pulled out his old, battered phone and hit the record button, capturing Gregory's incriminating words. When Gregory finished his call and returned inside, Ethan ran back to the courtroom breathless. Elaine noticed him immediately. "What's wrong?" "I have proof," Ethan said, handing her the phone. He admitted it. He faked the photos. Elaine's eyes lit up as she reviewed the recording. She approached the judge as the session resumed, presenting the evidence with confidence. "This recording," Elaine said, "proves that Mr. Carter fabricated evidence to discredit my client. This alone is grounds for dismissing his custody claim." Gregory's face turned red as the recording played in the courtroom. His attorney stammered, but the damage was done. After reviewing the recording, the judge ruled in Sophia's favor, granting her sole custody of Lila. Gregory stormed out of the courtroom, his carefully constructed facade shattered. Sophia clutched Lila tightly as tears streamed down her face. She turned to Ethan, who stood quietly by her side. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved us again." Ethan shrugged, but a small smile tugged at his lips. For the first time, he felt like he belonged, like he had a family worth fighting for. The courtroom battle was over, and Gregory was out of their lives, for now. Sophia and Ethan returned to the small apartment with Lila, their victory bittersweet. The scars left by Gregory's manipulation and cruelty lingered in their minds, and the weight of rebuilding their lives seemed heavier than ever. Sophia sat on the couch that evening, Lila sleeping peacefully in her arms. Her eyes were tired but filled with quiet determination. Across the room, Ethan was carefully folding a pile of freshly washed baby clothes, his focus precise. "You didn't have to do all of this, you know," Sophia said, breaking the silence. "The recording, standing up to Gregory, it's more than anyone's ever done for me." Ethan looked up, his expression earnest. "I couldn't just stand by and let him win. You and Lila are my family now. That means something." Sophia felt her throat tighten. For so long she had fought her battles alone. Now, for the first time, she wasn't standing on her own. The days that followed were a mix of relief and adjustment. Without Gregory's interference, life began to settle into a rhythm. Sophia spent her mornings tending to Lila, who grew stronger and more curious with each passing day. Ethan, ever resourceful, found ways to contribute, running errands, fixing broken appliances, and keeping the apartment in order. Sophia's financial troubles, however, remained a looming challenge. The legal battle had drained what little resources she had left. The luxurious life she had once known was a distant memory, replaced by a humbler but more honest existence. One afternoon, as they sat together for lunch, Sophia brought up the topic she had been avoiding. "I need to find work," she said. "Something stable so I can take care of Lila and keep this place." Ethan nodded. "I can help too." Maybe I can find a job somewhere. Sophia shook her head firmly. You're just a kid, Ethan. You've already given up too much. Let me take care of this. Ethan didn't argue. But the thought of standing idly by while Sophia struggled didn't sit well with him. Later that week, a knock at the door interrupted their quiet evening. Sophia opened it to find Daniel standing there, his sharp suit and kind smile a stark contrast to the modest surroundings. I came to check on you, Daniel said, stepping inside. His gaze swept over the small apartment, landing on Ethan, who was rocking Lila gently in her crib. Looks like you've got things under control. Sophia smiled faintly. Thanks to you. I don't know how to repay you for everything. Daniel waved her gratitude away. You don't owe me anything. But I might have a way to help you get back on your feet. Sophia's brows furrowed in curiosity. What do you mean? Daniel handed her a business card. A friend of mine owns a high-end boutique downtown. She's looking for someone to help manage the place. I told her about you, your sense of style, your work ethic. She's interested. Sophia's heart leapt at the possibility. But I haven't worked in years, and Lila, she's willing to work around your schedule. Daniel interrupted gently. It's not a handout, Sophia. It's a chance to start fresh. Sophia glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod. You should do it, he said. You deserve this. Sophia started her new job the following week. The boutique was a haven of elegance and luxury. Crystal chandeliers, racks of designer clothing, and clients who spoke in hushed, refined tones. Though intimidating at first, Sophia quickly found her footing. Her natural charm and eye for detail won over both her co-workers and the clientele. Meanwhile, Ethan took on more responsibility at home. He cared for Lila during Sophia's shifts, mastering the art of diaper changes, bottle feedings, and lullabies. Despite the challenges, he found fulfillment in his role. Lila's giggles and Sophia's growing confidence were rewards enough. Just as life began to feel stable, Gregory reappeared, though not in person. A letter arrived in the mail, addressed to Sophia. It was brief but chilling. You may have won this time, but don't think I've forgotten. Watch your back. Sophia's hands trembled as she read the note. Why can't he just leave us alone? She murmured, her voice barely audible. Ethan, standing beside her, took the letter and read it carefully. His jaw tightened. He's trying to scare you. He wants you to feel like he's still in control. Sophia nodded, though fear flickered in her eyes. What if he comes back? Ethan's voice was steady. Then we'll be ready. Determined not to let Gregory's threats overshadow their progress, Sophia and Ethan began to strengthen their ties to the community. Sophia befriended her co-workers, who offered her support and advice. Ethan, meanwhile, volunteered at a local shelter, helping other kids who had been through hardships like his own. The shelter became a safe haven for Ethan, a place where he could channel his energy and connect with others who understood his struggles. He shared his story sparingly, but his actions spoke volumes. The staff and other kids admired his resilience and kindness. One day, as Ethan was leaving the shelter, he noticed a familiar figure waiting outside, Gregory's former driver, Marcus. Ethan's instincts told him to be cautious, but Marcus approached with a look of remorse. I need to talk to you, Marcus said. It's about Gregory. Marcus explained that he had worked for Gregory for years, witnessing his manipulative and often illegal activities. I quit after what he pulled with the custody case, Marcus said. I couldn't be part of it anymore. Ethan crossed his arms, skeptical. Why are you telling me this? Because Gregory won't stop, Marcus said bluntly. He's already planning his next move. But I have information that could put an end to it. For good. Ethan hesitated. He didn't trust Marcus, but the chance to finally neutralize Gregory was too important to ignore. What kind of information? Ethan asked. Marcus glanced around, lowering his voice. Proof of his offshore accounts. And something worse. Evidence that ties him to a legal deal. Ethan's mind raced. This could be the leverage they needed to protect Sophia and Lila once and for all. Ethan returned home that evening, conflicted. He didn't tell Sophia about Marcus. He didn't want to worry her. Instead, he resolved to meet Marcus again, determined to uncover the truth. Sophia noticed his distraction but didn't press him. She was too focused on her own worries, trying to build a stable life for Lila. Still, a nagging feeling told her that something was weighing on Ethan. As the apartment settled into quiet for the night, Ethan stared out the window, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on his shoulders. He knew he was stepping into dangerous territory. But if it meant protecting the only family he had ever known, it was a risk he was willing to take. The next day, Ethan left the apartment under the pretense of heading to the shelter. In reality, he was meeting Marcus in a quiet, deserted parking lot on the outskirts of town. The weight of what he was about to do sat heavily on his young shoulders. But the stakes were too high to ignore. If Marcus's information could expose Gregory, it might finally end the torment that loomed over Sophia and Lila. Marcus was already waiting, leaning against an old sedan. His nervous energy was palpable, and he gestured for Ethan to follow him into the car. "Did anyone see you?" Marcus asked, glancing around. "No," Ethan replied, his tone guarded. "What's this all about?" Marcus handed Ethan a thick manila envelope. Inside were documents, bank statements, transaction records, and a list of names that made Ethan's stomach churn. He didn't recognize most of the names, but even his untrained eye could tell that Gregory had been involved in something sinister. "This is everything," Marcus said. "Offshore accounts, bribes, illegal partnerships. If this gets to the right people, Gregory's finished." Ethan stared at the papers, the enormity of the evidence sinking in. "Why are you giving this to me?" Marcus hesitated. "Because I know you'll do the right thing. Gregory's ruined too many lives. Someone needs to stop him." Ethan returned home that evening, the envelope hidden beneath his jacket. As he stepped inside, Sophia immediately noticed his tense expression. "Everything okay?" she asked, cradling Lila in her arms. "Yeah," Ethan lied, avoiding her gaze. "Just tired." Sophia frowned but didn't press him. She trusted Ethan, but his recent secrecy worried her. He had always been honest and open. Now, there was a distance she couldn't quite place. In his room, Ethan spread the documents across his bed. The names and numbers blurred together as he tried to make sense of it all. One name stood out: Kendrick Holdings, a shell company that seemed to be at the center of Gregory's activities. Ethan knew he needed help to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. His first instinct was to go to Daniel. The businessman had proven himself trustworthy, and his connections could prove invaluable. But involving Daniel also meant risking Sophia finding out. Ethan wasn't sure she could handle another confrontation with Gregory. Not yet. The following morning, Ethan slipped away again and made his way to Daniel's mansion. The imposing gates seemed less intimidating this time as he pressed the intercom. "I need to see Daniel," he said. Moments later, Ethan was ushered into the study, where Daniel greeted him with a mix of curiosity and concern. "What's going on, Ethan? You look like you've seen a ghost." Ethan wasted no time. He laid the documents on the desk and explained everything: his meeting with Marcus, the evidence, and Gregory's looming threat. Daniel's expression darkened as he reviewed the papers. "This is serious," he said. "If this information gets out, Gregory could face prison time. But handling something like this isn't simple." "It's dangerous." Ethan straightened his shoulders. "I don't care. I just want him to leave Sophia and Lila alone." Daniel sighed, impressed by the boy's resolve. "All right, I'll help you. But we need to be careful. Gregory has powerful friends, and if he gets wind of this, he won't go down without a fight." Unbeknownst to Ethan, Gregory had already begun to suspect that someone was digging into his affairs. His private investigator, still loyal despite Marcus's betrayal, had been tracking Ethan's movements. When Gregory learned that the boy had met with Marcus and later visited Daniel, his fury boiled over. "That little brat thinks he can take me down?" Gregory snarled, pacing his lavish office. "He doesn't know who he's dealing with." Gregory wasted no time retaliating. That evening, Sophia received a notice in the mail: a sudden eviction from her apartment due to unpaid rent. She knew it wasn't true. She had been diligent about her payments, but the landlord refused to budge. As she packed their belongings in a panic, Ethan returned to find her in tears. "What's going on?" he asked, alarmed. "We're being evicted," Sophia said, her voice shaking. "I don't know how, but Gregory's behind this." Ethan's fists clenched. He couldn't let Gregory win. "We'll figure something out," he promised. "You won't lose everything because of him." Desperate to protect Sophia and Lila, Ethan agreed to meet Marcus again. This time, Marcus had more information. Details that could strengthen their case against Gregory, but came at a price. "I have a contact who can leak this to the media," Marcus said. "But it'll cost money. Gregory's people won't go down without a fight." Ethan hesitated. Money was something they didn't have, but he couldn't walk away now. "I'll figure it out," he said. Marcus gave him a wary look. "Be careful, kid. You're playing with fire." Back at Daniel's mansion, Ethan explained the situation. Daniel, ever the strategist, had already begun formulating a plan. He contacted his legal team and a trusted journalist, ensuring the evidence would be handled securely and responsibly. "We'll hit Gregory where it hurts," Daniel said. "But we have to be smart. If he finds out before we're ready, he'll bury us." Ethan nodded, trusting Daniel's judgment. For the first time in days, he felt a spark of hope. They had the upper hand, at least for now. With Daniel's help, Sophia and Lila moved into a temporary apartment, far from Gregory's reach. Though the space was small and simple, it offered a sense of safety that had been missing for too long. Sophia noticed a change in Ethan during this time. He seemed more focused, more determined. She didn't know the full extent of what he was doing, but she trusted him implicitly. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Sophia turned to him. "You've done so much for us, Ethan. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't have to," Ethan said softly. "You and Lila are my family. That's enough." Sophia smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "You're more than just family, Ethan. You're our hero." The new apartment offered a fragile sense of peace for Sophia, Lila, and Ethan, but the shadow of Gregory loomed ever larger. While Sophia tried to focus on rebuilding their lives, Ethan and Daniel worked quietly behind the scenes to finalize their plan to expose Gregory's corruption. However, they underestimated how far Gregory was willing to go to protect his empire. Sophia had begun to adjust to her new job at the boutique. Her days were spent dressing clients in expensive clothes and managing inventory, but her evenings were reserved for Lila and Ethan. The bond between the three had only grown stronger, and their makeshift family felt like a blessing. One night, as Sophia rocked Lila to sleep, she looked at Ethan, who was quietly organizing their limited belongings. "I don't know how we got through all of this," she said softly, "but I feel like we're finally safe." Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to tell her about the ongoing plans with Daniel and Marcus. He didn't want to shatter her fragile sense of security, so he simply nodded. "We'll be okay," he said. "I'll make sure of it." The next morning, while Sophia was at work, Ethan received an unexpected visitor. A man dressed in a crisp suit knocked on the door, his expression cold and unyielding. Ethan's heart sank when he recognized him as one of Gregory's associates. "I have a message from Mr. Carter," the man said, handing Ethan a sealed envelope. Ethan opened it cautiously. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Gregory's sharp handwriting. "You have something of mine. If you value your family's safety, you'll return it." Ethan's stomach churned. Gregory had figured out that they had the documents, and now, his threats were becoming personal. That evening, Ethan met with Daniel at the mansion, showing him the letter. Daniel's jaw tightened as he read it. "He's trying to scare you," Daniel said. "But we're too close to back down now." Ethan frowned. "What if he really does something? Sophia and Lila. He'll hurt them if we don't stop him." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "That's why we need to move fast. The journalist I contacted is ready to go public with the evidence, but Gregory will do everything he can to stop us. We need to be prepared." Ethan nodded, though a heavy sense of dread hung over him. He was just a kid, but he had become the last line of defense for the only family he had ever known. Later that week, Sophia returned home from work to find Ethan pacing nervously. He had decided it was time to tell her everything. "Gregory's not done," Ethan began, handing her the letter. "He knows about the documents. He's threatening us." Sophia's face paled as she read the note. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to scare you," Ethan admitted, "but Daniel and I are working on a plan. We have proof that can take Gregory down for good." Sophia shook her head, fear and anger warring in her expression. "Ethan, this isn't your fight. You've already done so much. I can't let you risk yourself for us." Ethan's voice hardened. "It's not just your fight anymore. Gregory doesn't just want to hurt you. He wants to destroy everything we've built. I won't let that happen." Sophia stared at him, tears brimming in her eyes. She wanted to protest, but she knew Ethan's mind was made up. The next day, as Ethan walked to the shelter, he noticed a black car idling at the corner. He quickened his pace, but the car began to follow him. Panic surged through him as the car pulled up beside him, and two men stepped out. "Come with us," one of them ordered, grabbing Ethan by the arm. Ethan struggled, but they forced him into the car. His heart raced as they sped through the city, eventually stopping at a secluded warehouse. Inside, Gregory stood waiting, his expression cold and predatory. "You've been a thorn in my side for too long," Gregory said, his voice low and menacing. "Where are the documents?" Ethan met Gregory's gaze, fear clawing at his chest but refusing to back down. "I don't have them," Gregory smirked. "You're brave, I'll give you that. But bravery won't save you, or that little family you're so desperate to protect." Gregory signaled to his men, who grabbed Ethan and pushed him to the ground. "This is your last chance," Gregory said. "Tell me where the documents are, or you'll regret it." Ethan's mind raced. He knew he couldn't give Gregory what he wanted, but he also knew he wouldn't leave that warehouse unscathed. As Gregory's men moved closer, a loud commotion erupted outside the warehouse. The doors burst open and Daniel entered, flanked by 2 police officers. "Gregory Carter," Daniel said, his voice commanding. "Step away from the boy." Gregory's face darkened as the officers approached. "You have no idea what you're getting into, Daniel." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing," Daniel shot back. "And now the whole world will too." The officers escorted Gregory's men out of the warehouse, but Gregory remained defiant. "This isn't over," he hissed as he was handcuffed. Daniel rushed to Ethan, helping him to his feet. "Are you okay?" he asked. Ethan nodded, though his legs felt like jelly. "How did you find me?" "Marcus tipped me off," Daniel said. "He's been watching Gregory's moves." Ethan felt a surge of relief but knew the fight wasn't truly over. The following day, the journalist Daniel had contacted published a damning exposé on Greg. The article detailed his illegal activities, complete with evidence from the documents Ethan and Marcus had uncovered. It quickly gained national attention, and authorities launched a formal investigation into Gregory's empire. Sophia watched the news with tears in her eyes. "It's over," she whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." Ethan, sitting beside her, allowed himself a small smile. For the first time in what felt like forever, he believed her. The storm had passed, but its remnants lingered in the hearts of Ethan, Sophia, and Lila. Gregory's arrest and the subsequent media firestorm marked a turning point in their lives. For the first time in years, Sophia could breathe without the shadow of fear looming over her. Yet, rebuilding a life from ruins wasn't easy, and the emotional scars Gregory left behind still needed healing. Ethan, though relieved, found himself grappling with a strange emptiness. His entire existence had been centered around protecting Sophia and Lila, and now that the immediate threat was gone, he struggled to envision his own future. But even as doubt crept in, his resolve to stand by his newfound family remained unshaken. In the weeks following Gregory's downfall, Sophia focused on creating a stable and nurturing environment for Lila. She threw herself into her job at the boutique, earning the respect of her co-workers and securing a promotion that provided much-needed financial security. Her confidence began to bloom again, though she often credited Ethan for being her anchor during the darkest times. One evening, as they sat together for dinner, Sophia reached across the table and took Ethan's hand. "You saved us," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not just from Gregory, but from everything he tried to take away. You gave us hope." Ethan shrugged, his modesty intact. "You would have done the same for me." Sophia smiled. "I already consider you my son, Ethan, but I want to make it official. I want to adopt you, if that's something you'd want too." Ethan froze, the weight of her words sinking in. Tears welled in his eyes as he nodded. Unable to speak, for the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged. As their lives began to stabilize, Ethan found himself reflecting on his past. Memories of his mother surfaced more frequently, and he realized that part of healing meant honoring where, with Sophia's encouragement, he decided to visit the small cemetery where his mother was buried. Sophia accompanied him, holding Lila close as they stood by the simple gravestone. Ethan knelt, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers at its base. "I did it, Mom," he whispered. "I found a family. I'm safe now." Sophia rested a hand on his shoulder, her presence grounding him. "She'd be so proud of you, Ethan." As they left the cemetery, Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. His mother's memory no longer felt like a burden. It was a source of strength. One afternoon, Daniel stopped by their apartment with an envelope in hand. He handed it to Sophia, his expression unreadable. "What's this?" she asked, opening it cautiously. Inside was a deed to a small house on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't grand, but it was charming, with enough space for their little family to grow. "It's yours," Daniel said. "A fresh start. Consider it a thank you for trusting me, and for reminding me that some battles are worth fighting." Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she embraced him. "I don't know how to thank you. Just be happy," Daniel said with a smile. Moving into the house felt like stepping into a new chapter. Ethan chose a room near the nursery, eager to stay close to Lila. He spent his days fixing up the space, painting walls, and building furniture with his own hands. It was more than just a house. It was a home. To mark their new beginning, Sophia and Ethan decided to host a small gathering at the house. They invited Margaret, Daniel, and a few friends from the boutique and the shelter. The evening was filled with laughter, music, and stories of triumph. As the sun set, Sophia stood to address the group, holding Lila in her arms. "This family wouldn't exist without all of you," she said, her voice strong and full of gratitude. "Ethan and I have been through so much, but we've come out stronger because we had people who believed in us. Thank you for being part of our journey." Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with pride. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future, one filled with love, stability, and endless possibilities. After the guests had left and the house had quieted down, Sophia called Ethan into the living room. Lila was already asleep in her crib, leaving the two of them to share a quiet moment. "I have something for you," Sophia said, handing him a small box. Ethan opened it to reveal a keychain with an engraving. "Our hero." Attached to it was a key. "That's for you," Sophia said. "It's a symbol of everything you've given us. This house wouldn't be home without you." Ethan held the keychain tightly, his throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." As the weeks turned into months, the little family continued to thrive. Sophia's boutique career flourished, Ethan excelled in school, and Lila grew into a happy, curious toddler. They celebrated milestones together, from birthdays to small victories, each moment a testament to their resilience. Gregory's name faded into the background as his empire crumbled under the weight of his crimes. Though the scars he left behind would never fully disappear, they no longer defined Sophia or Ethan. They had reclaimed their lives and their happiness. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their new home, Ethan turned to Sophia. "I used to think my life was just about surviving," he said. "But now I know it's about so much more. It's about living. And I have you to thank for that." Sophia smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "We saved each other, Ethan, and we're just getting started." This story reminds us of the power of resilience, love, and family. It takes a lot of effort to create videos like this, but your support makes it all worthwhile. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and check out our other videos for more heartfelt stories. Together, we can keep sharing hope and inspiration. Thank you for watching.